Going beyond the headlines. Asking the questions you want answered. Exploring government policies and how they impact you. We are delving deeper.
Good evening and welcome to Delving Deeper. I am your host, Ayana Carter. Joining us this evening are Disability Affairs Specialist, Ms. Tessa Pascall, and Dr. Amanda Piper, audiologist at the Trinidad and Tobago Association for the Hearing Impaired. Ms. Pascall, Dr. Piper, good evening and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having us.
Good evening. Good evening.
Now, Ms. Pascall, let's start with you. What is your role of the Disability Affairs Unit?
The Disability Affairs Unit of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services seeks to promote practices, programs, and attitudes that foster the inclusion and full participation of persons with disabilities in all spheres of society.
And what are some of the initiatives pursued by the division in support of persons with disabilities?
The Disability Affairs Unit will conduct things such as we implement and monitor the national policy on persons with disabilities, as well as the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We do advocacy to promote the human rights as well as the inclusion and full participation of persons with disabilities. We do sensitization for both private and public entities in how to interact with, communicate with, and relate to persons with disabilities. And we also do provide technical support and referrals to persons with disabilities for entities and families of persons with disabilities who seek information with regards to disabilities. We network with NGOs, regional, international, locally, as well as mass media and so forth, to provide information, to provide technical support, to provide sensitization, and to advocate for persons with disabilities.
Now, Dr. Piper, what is the role of TAHI?
The Trinidad and Tobago Association for the Hearing Impaired is an organization that is dedicated to improving the quality of life for children and adults who have hearing loss in Trinidad and Tobago. So our core initiatives are really centered on establishing schools for children who are deaf and who communicate primarily using sign language. And we also, with regards to adults, support the employment and the entrepreneurship of our adults who are deaf or hard of hearing. So we also have another core initiative really providing psychosocial and counseling support for the families that we serve, as well as the main large diagnostic clinical arm, which is fondly known as DRECHI. So that's what most people commonly associate the Trinidad and Tobago Association for the Hearing Impaired with, the DRECHI clinic.
Right. And what are some of the services offered by the association?
Sure. So we really cover a breadth of various services. So I'll start with our schools. We manage 2 schools for the deaf in Trinidad and Tobago, the Cascade School for the Deaf in Cascade, Port of Spain, and the Audrey Jeffers School for the Deaf in Marabella. And in addition to those 2 schools, we also provide sign language interpreting services for individuals as well as groups. So if you need a sign language interpreter for a doctor's visit, for a court matter, any type of meeting, we can facilitate that. Or perhaps you want to incorporate sign language workshops or basic sign language learning for small businesses, corporations. We also facilitate those workshops.
Oh, that's excellent. I love that.
Yeah. But in terms of the clinic, the DRECHI clinic, we cover possibly the whole range and spectrum of audiology services that you can think of. So we provide hearing screenings for babies from as young as really 2 weeks old, so when they're quite little. And then we provide full diagnostic, comprehensive diagnostic audiological exam as well for all ages. So babies, toddlers, school-age children, young adults, mature adults, senior citizens, the whole lifespan we cover. And in addition to the audiology we do have a speech language therapist on board. So she provides early intervention services for our little one, our children who have hearing loss. And what Dretchy is remarkably known for is our free hearing aid program. So patients who are diagnosed with hearing loss and once they're citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, they do qualify, they are candidates to receive hearing technology from our clinic free of charge, no cost.
Oh, that is excellent.
Yeah. And we provide all the accessories for the hearing aids, the batteries, all the other things, the servicing, we clean, check, vacuum. Yeah. We have an on-site air mold lab. So we really do provide a quite comprehensive service.
Yeah, according to my grandmother, all the accoutrements.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, and of course the follow-ups and all of that.
Yes, most definitely. So we follow very keenly, really every 6 to 12 months with most of our patients. With our adults, probably every 1 to 2 years, but we closely monitor hearing for most of the patients that we serve.
Now, back to you, Ms. Pascall. You mentioned earlier about the national policy on persons with disabilities. Could you just break that down for us a little bit? Tell us what the policy is about.
The national policy on persons with disabilities is basically a framework, an outline for the government of Trinidad and Tobago that shows the commitment of the government to implementing program, policies, structures, and systems to ensure the rights and inherent dignity of persons with disabilities. The government would have signed the United Nations Convention, ratified the convention in June of 2015, and therefore to meet the obligations under that convention, the government is required to do certain things, to perform certain actions. And as such, the national policy was developed so that it can have a framework to go forward in ensuring that the human rights and fundamental freedoms of all persons with disabilities are theirs to access as they see fit.
Okay. What does the national policy aim to do, really?
The aims of the national policy is really to, again, provide a framework or structure to develop public policy as well as legislation to elevate the issues that surround persons with disabilities, to provide or to help persons with disabilities and their families develop, to ensure that programs and services provided by the government are inclusive to persons with disabilities, and to promote services that are inclusive and that are accessible, better services for persons with disabilities.
What are some of the areas covered throughout the policy itself?
So I definitely cannot cover all the areas, but I'll touch on some of them.
Sure. The main
quite
stuff.
A lot. So the accessibility. And when we talk about accessibility, we talk about accessibility to transport, accessibility to the built physical environment, which of course will include ramps, wider doorways, wider corridors, railings or grab bars on toilet facilities and so forth. And we have access to information and communication, which means sign language for television programs that provide information. We want print, large print or braille for persons who are unable to read printed material and things like that, in order so that whichever disability you have, you are able to access information on an equal basis with others. We have access to justice, we have health, we have education, we have employment, we have rehabilitation and habilitation, we have situations of risk and natural disasters. We have exploitation and abuse of persons with disabilities, the right to life. Of course, the convention covers and the national policy, because they are aligned with each other, covers more. But yes, those are some of the areas.
Now, Dr. Piper, what is the importance of getting your hearing tested? And how often should persons do this? I mean, it's not something that persons would, I think regularly think about. It comes as naturally as maybe breathing. So we don't think about it until maybe there's an issue.
Absolutely.
But in your professional opinion, you could let us know.
It's an excellent question. I think I could talk all day about it, but I'll try to keep my response succinct. Let's start with children, because I am a pediatric audiologist by training. So I will say, if you have a niece, a nephew, a little one, a grandchild, or son or daughter, that's between the ages of 1 and 5, and they are a late talker, delayed speech and language development, they're not meeting their milestones as we would expect, it's vitally important that we check that child's hearing as part of a holistic assessment of that child. Even when we go up to school age, if you have children who are struggling in school, poor academic progress, teachers have great concern, we often say check hearing, check vision. Those are the two most important senses for learning. So children are not often able to articulate what their difficulties or their struggles are. So we have to be proactive about checking, especially with our little ones. Now, if we advance in years to the adult population, I'll put it across to you this way. From my perspective, we're very keen on testing our eyes. We check our vision regularly, we check our blood pressure, check our blood sugar levels, go to the dentist. But hearing tends to be a neglected and more forgotten sensory system. So I will say truthfully, for all of us, as we age, our hearing declines. That's a known fact, and it's well understood in the medical community. So if we can appreciate and understand that our hearing decreases as we age, then we can think about, well, for some of us, it impacts us more significantly than others, and some of us more earlier than others. And so the degree of hearing loss you might experience, or the age at which it might occur, really depends on a number of factors. I just wanted to throw this out there for us to consider. Family history. So genetics can play a big part, a big role in how early or how significant of a hearing loss we experience later on in life. The decades and decades of listening to dangerously loud levels of music, right? So our leisure activities can also put us at risk for hearing loss. But besides leisure, also occupational. So we have a lot of persons in the construction industry, the oil industry, because of the nature of their jobs, they are exposed to dangerously loud levels of noise from machines, tools, loud equipment, boilers, large pieces of machinery. So those persons are also at risk. And then we have lifestyle diseases, believe it or not. Hypertension and diabetes increases the risk of hearing loss exponentially. So when we look at all those factors, it hits pretty close to home for many of us, or perhaps for other family members that we know of. So I think it's something that we do need to take note of. And if you by chance have a family member that's over the age of 70, the World Health Organization pretty much estimates that 1 in 3 persons over 70 have some degree of hearing loss. So if you think of 3 people over the age of 70, probably 1 of them are struggling to hear. So if you put all of that together, it's quite important that at some point in time we get a baseline. Let's check our hearing and see what's really going on, especially if you're straining to hear, to turn up the TV extra loud, the radio is blasting in the car. You have to ask people to repeat themselves 2, 3, 4 times. Those are signs that we really need to get a full assessment and a deeper look into, the hearing status of that person.
And now you mentioned dangerously loud noises. Now, I think that might be relative to some people. But what really clinically would you estimate is dangerously loud moderate, or, how does that work?
If there's any sound that is stimulating the ear over 85 decibels, that can cause permanent irreversible damage to the sensory organ, the cochlea, right? That's the inner ear. And I call the cochlea, that's like the engine of the whole auditory system, kind of like the engine of your car. You need a well-oiled, lubricated, strong functioning engine in order to power that car. So same thing with the cochlea. We want to keep the cochlea healthy and robust. And so the constant barrage of loud noise or music frequently at very high levels can cause damage over time. So we really want to be cognizant of the duration of exposure, how long we find ourselves in those environments, and the frequency, right? How often. So everything over 85 decibels is about the sound of a weed whacker, just to give you some context.
Okay.
If you go to a fete, a party, man, a wedding, there are loudspeakers. If you're close to these speakers, you're probably getting about 95 to 100 decibels of sound input. So really that threshold is exponentially high. You should not be in those environments for any lengthy period of time. If you have to be, keep your distance away from these speakers. So we often find that after the carnival season, people come to visit us because there's a temporary threshold shift. That's what we call it medically. So hearing shifts or fluctuates a bit because the ears have been overstimulated, right? And they might get ringing, buzzing, chirping, strange sensations and sounds in the air. So our motto is, protect the hearing that you have, because we want it to last for your entire life. Yeah. So if you know that you'll be in a loud environment, a loud context, whatever that is for leisure or work, little earplugs, hearing protection, the disposable ones, the reusable ones, they are beautiful, beautiful little instruments that can protect the hearing that we have.
Because I was going to ask you, what could be used then, to protect our hearing?
So at the Dretchy Clinic, we actually make custom-made ear molds as well as hearing protection. So we can take a special impression of the ear, taking into the size, shape, volume of a person's particular ear canal, and we can make hearing protection for that person. And it's pretty excellent. You can get about 30 to 40 decibels of attenuation in terms of ambient noise. We can bring down the noise to a safe listening level if you use earplugs and if they're well inserted. So you can go into a loud environment and you can be cool as a cucumber with your hearing protection in. So I always keep a pair in my purse because you never know.
Yeah.
Especially with loud music trucks, and they stay and they linger. And so and in your environment you might have neighbors who on a Friday night they jam in. So in a case like that, if they're not responsive to your pleas to reduce the music, just pop in your hearing protection and you'll be good to go.
Yeah. Well, something to consider, considering Christmas and Carnival right around the corner, right? Okay. Now, Ms. Pascall, the national policy on persons with disabilities. Now, why was the policy developed?
So the first national policy was developed in 2005. And there was an accompanying action plan for 7 years, which ran out in 2012. While the ministry was in the process of reviewing that document, the government would have ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2015. As such, the revised policy or the new policy fell in line with the needs or the obligations of the convention. And that document was approved by Parliament as a white paper, Cabinet, I believe, in 2019, in May 2019. The government under the UNCRPD has obligations to ensure that persons with disabilities are able to access fully their human rights, to observe their inherent human dignity, They are to ensure that programs, services, and so forth meet the needs of persons with disabilities. It will be how we work in collaboration with TAHI, the Association for the Hearing Impaired, because through subventions, we have to ensure persons who are deaf are identified and that the services they need are received. So the policy would have been developed to ensure that programs and services meet the needs of persons with disabilities. That's a little history of the policy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as some people, we see it a lot when it comes to policies such as this one. People don't generally get the connection between what is in the policy and how it affects them directly. So how does the national policy on persons with disabilities affect, or how is it significant to persons with disabilities and then by extension persons in Trinidad and Tobago on the whole?
So the significance of the policy to persons with disabilities is that it's a structure or a framework for government in terms of when they're implementing policy, programs, services, so that it meets the needs of persons with disabilities. In terms of the wider public, it provides not just the framework, but it also provides some level of advocacy and awareness, because general public are not aware of the issues that affect persons with disabilities. So when governments start doing things in a specific way, they then realize the need for these things. So when you start seeing ramps going up in front of buildings, you realize, okay, there's a reason for that. And a lot of times, the measures we take to address issues affecting persons with disabilities also serve people in the wider public. So curb cuts in pavements, ramps in buildings, yes, for persons with wheelchairs, it will be useful. But a mother carrying a child in a pram, that will also be helpful to them as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Handymen carrying goods on trolleys, that will also be helpful to them, right? So while yes, the main purpose might be to serve persons with disabilities, you'll also see that those policies and programs will help persons who do not even consider that they have a disability.
Yeah. Now, I agree a lot with the advocacy and awareness, because again, persons don't see it as important until it hits home,
That's correct.
So it's good that the policy covers this aspect as well, so persons can, as you rightly said, be more aware, even though it doesn't directly affect you right now. It can, right?
It can affect you just now.
Yeah.
No, literally just now. As you get up from here, we sit in a vehicle, we going down the highway, we end up in an accident. It doesn't affect me today, it affects me tomorrow.
Yeah. And that is very true. And now, how does the government monitor the implementation of the policy?
So the government, through cabinet, we appoint a committee. The committee is made up of government representatives from various ministries. We have NGOs, and this will be NGOs serving the community of persons with disabilities. So you will have NGOs possibly like TAHI or Blind Welfare Association, or the Consortium of Disability Organization, different NGOs on the committee. We will also have persons with disabilities themselves on the committee. Mm-hmm. And based on reports from the various ministries, because the National Action Plan and the National Policy indicate that each ministry have certain things that they need to achieve under their purview, so that because disability is a multidisciplinary issue, so it is addressed from all aspects. So they will receive reports and so forth from the various ministries. So we will understand what is happening, what needs to happen. The Disability Affairs Unit at present is the secretariat for that committee.
Now, Dr. Piper, coming back to you, how can persons go about getting their hearing screened? Where do they go? What do we do?
Sure, great question. So the Trinidad and Tobago Association for the Hearing Impaired, and by extension the Dretchy Clinic, is located at 13C Ryson Road. So that's right next door to the University of Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah, and thankfully, we encourage referrals, but they're not necessary. A patient, an individual, a family member can call and make an appointment. You can contact us at 623-0612, yeah, or 623-0613. So you can call us to make an appointment. Additionally, you can also email us at association@ttahi.org. And we also have a Facebook page. So Trinidad and Tobago Association for the Hearing Impaired, you can find us on Facebook. We have a website that is being revamped. It's in development stages. So that should be functional in the short-term future. But till then, the main modes of communication are over the phone. For the persons who are deaf, we do have a cell phone that we can share that specific telephone number so that they can text us or WhatsApp us if they want to schedule a hearing test. But besides the more clinical part of it, if there's an organization, let's say a school, an NGO, even a department within a ministry, and they want to have hearing screenings for their staff members, we also facilitate that. So we do outreach to organizations, small businesses, community events, public health initiatives, health fairs, you name it. And once scheduling and availability permit, we'll come on site and we'll do hearing screenings for, you know, a group of persons, up to about 50 to 60 persons, yeah. And so we do that routinely, and we like making the trip to more far removed communities and bringing services to patients and families rather than, you know, everything being concentrated in Port of Spain. So we are happy to facilitate those initiatives as well.
Okay, is there a cost attached?
Usually there's a minimal cost, and when I say minimal, very minimal, and sometimes we do it free as well. So it really just depends on the nature of what's being requested and the amount of persons. Yeah, if we need a lot of staff members to service a particular event, it really all depends. But you contact us. We really don't say no to people other than if there's a clash in scheduling, but we're happy to serve the community, and we really want to bring more public awareness to the importance of hearing health, because again, it's just something that is neglected and really, really under the radar for lots of persons.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Piper, I think that you're a really good advocate, because now I'm thinking I'm going to call one of the numbers and get my hearing screened. You know?
Happy to have you.
It's really something that you don't think about. I mean, I wear glasses. I get my eyes tested.
And trust me, you are not the only person. I have had patients who they are well into their 90s and they've never ever had their hearing checked.
Wow.
Ever. So, we say, if you are near retirement age, 60 to 65, let's start there. So at least we can get a baseline and monitor, and over time we can continue to check. But we really don't want to wait until things get severely difficult to then be providing rehabilitation for patients. We don't want them suffering in silence. So let's get them tested early and see how we can support them.
Right. Well, great.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ms. Pascall, what are some of the achievements that you have seen for the policy so far?
Through the policy, we would have signed the Marrakesh Treaty, which is an international treaty that encourages the adaptation of published material into alternative formats, be it Braille, easy read, large print, or audio versions. And we would have signed an agreement with the Book Consortium, which would allow NALIS to access over, I believe, 700,000 published pieces of material. So NALIS is the only agency or the only entity in the country with the authorization to reproduce those works in alternative formats. And they would have signed an MOU with Blind Welfare, Trinidad and Tobago Blind Welfare Association, who would assist, of course, in the reproduction in Braille and the various formats, right? So that was one of the things. And in order to do that, signing Marrakesh Treaty, we would have also had to get the Copyright Act amended, which we were able to do. The change in money from cotton to polymer that now has tactile, and I know a lot of people like to say Braille, but it's not actually Braille symbols. They are tactile symbols that indicates the different denominations. And we would have also gotten the removal of VAT and import duty on assistive aids and devices for persons with disabilities. So whether it's some therapeutic equipment, it is devices like I will use, which is a electronic magnifier, or you will have like a talking microwave or a talking bathroom scale. A lot of my things talk. So I got a talking thermometer last night. Ooh. Right? So those things are now VAT and tax and duty free for imports. And all the relevant things were put in place for that. The legislation was changed and all of that. So that is in place as well, that we would have achieved those things under the policy.
I need to get me one of those talking, probably not the bathroom scale.
Yeah,
probably
it's
not
disrespectful. I'll agree with you. Sometimes it doesn't want to hear what it has to say.
Could I say that that was such a phenomenal initiative by our government of Trinidad and Tobago to waive the duties and VAT on all these assistive types of technology, because just for example, in our sphere of audiology, we bring in hundreds and hundreds of hearing aids every single year. We do not manufacture hearing aids in Trinidad, neither within the Caribbean region. So we have to source our hearing aids from more developed countries. Canada, the UK, Switzerland, right. A lot of these manufacturers are in larger developed countries. And so it is extremely costly when you look at bringing in these products, as well as all their different accessories to be able to serve the population. So I think that has been a humongous, just gigantic, massive initiative. And it's definitely yielding fruit for us and enabling us to purchase more technology with the resources that we have. So I fully applaud, whoever was pushing that to go through. And so it was well welcomed, received, and we don't want that to go away anytime soon.
Well, I think with advocates like Ms. Pascall, definitely, it's only going to get better.
We try.
Now, Ms. Pascall, where can persons find more information on the policy and on the Disability Affairs Unit?
The Ministry of Social Development website, www.social.gov.tt. Disability Affairs also have a website, dau.socialtt.org. You can contact the office at 623-2608, extension 1150 to 1159, or you can call our basic the ministry and they will transfer you to the relevant office. Right? I believe we are extension 7 on the automated service. So if you call the ministry and press 7, you will get the Disability Affairs Unit.
All right, and so just before we end this evening's program, Dr. Piper, do you have any final thoughts?
I will summarize my final thoughts. Let's be sure to test our hearing and protect our hearing, because the hearing that we have has to last us our entire lives. And so let's be mindful of our little ones, our young children who They may have an undiagnosed hearing loss and we don't know. So if there are concerns for speech and language, let's be sure, let's check their hearing. And then all the way up the lifespan, if we have older adults, mature, senior citizens, and we're concerned for their ability to communicate, hear us over the telephone, let's get their hearing checked. Yeah, let's not neglect any members of society and be proactive about that.
And Ms. Pascall, any final thoughts from you?
Disability is everybody's concern. It is not just the ministry's concern. It is not just my concern. Like I said earlier, it may affect me today, but it could affect you tomorrow. We don't know what tomorrow holds, and therefore we should prepare for it. While the ministry is doing what it has to do on its end, it is up to everybody, whether it's in the public sector, private sector, or at home, to do what they need to do to ensure that there is sensitization, to ensure that there is accessibility to all persons, including persons with disabilities.
Yeah, I could not have said it any better myself. Right? So thank you, Ms. Pascall. Thank you, Dr. Piper, for joining us on this week's episode of Delving Deeper.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure.
Join us at the same time next week for another episode of Delving Deeper. I am your host, Ayana Carter, and from all of us here, have a good night.